On the 17th floor of a Manhattan building shaped like a tube of lipstick, a man sat surrounded by machines that printed lies for a living. His name was Bernie Madoff. To the world outside, he was Wall Street royalty, a former chairman of the NASDAQ, the electronic exchange his own firm had helped build. People didn't ask to invest with him, they begged. And what he sold them wasn't the dream of getting rich overnight. It was something far more seductive, a number that never went down. While markets crashed and fortunes burned around him, Bernie's returns just kept climbing, quietly, steadily, year after year, as if the rules of the universe didn't apply to him. The headlines would later put the damage at $65 billion. But that figure hides the first ghost in this story. Most of that money never existed. It was profit Bernie invented, printed onto paper statements, and mailed to people who believed they were watching their savings grow. The real cash, the pensions, the inheritances, the life savings that actually disappeared, was closer to $17 billion. And he moved it for years, in full view of the FBI, the regulators, and the cleverest minds on Wall Street. Every one of them looked straight at Bernie Madoff, and every one of them saw a saint. So the real question was never how he stole the money. It's how he convinced the whole world to help him hide it. It began like most empires, with almost nothing. In 1960, a 22-year-old Bernie Madoff started his firm with $5,000, money he'd saved working as a beach lifeguard and installing lawn sprinklers. For 3 decades, the business was real, and it was brilliant. He helped pioneer the computerized trading that would one day become the NASDAQ, and 3 separate times, Wall Street chose him as its chairman. That reputation became the most dangerous weapon he ever owned. By the 1990s, getting your money into a Madoff account was harder than getting into the most exclusive club on earth. And the strange part was that he acted like he didn't want it. A retired billionaire would corner him at a charity dinner in Palm Beach, practically pleading, offering $10 million, an entire life's work. And Bernie would smile and gently say he was sorry. The fund was closed. That refusal was the whole trick. Every no only made them more desperate for a yes. He wasn't chasing investors. He was making them audition for the privilege of handing over their fortunes. And he didn't even have to do the chasing himself. Whole investment funds grew up around him, middlemen who pooled billions from thousands of ordinary clients and quietly shoveled it all onto Bernie's books. Most of those clients never even learned his name. They just knew the number never went down. But while the richest people in the world were begging for a seat at his table, Bernie was guarding a secret so primitive it could have been uncovered in a single afternoon by anyone who simply walked 2 floors down. Step off the elevator onto the 17th floor and Wall Street simply vanished. No glowing screens, no traders shouting into phones, no high-speed cables humming behind the walls. This floor felt frozen somewhere around 1975. There was a reason for that. Modern computers are honest in a way a liar cannot afford. They keep records, timestamps, trails that lead back to the truth. So Bernie did it the old way. Down here, ancient dot matrix printers ran through the night, grinding out tens of thousands of fake account statements, trades that never happened, profits no one ever earned. All of it typed up by clerks who, in many cases, couldn't have told you the difference between a stock and a bond. Their only job was to copy old numbers onto fresh paper and make the lie look lived in. And the real trick was that no outsider ever checked. A normal investment fund keeps its money at an independent bank and reports its trades to a separate firm so that someone, somewhere, can confirm the money is actually there. Bernie held the money himself. Bernie recorded the trades himself, and the only outside accountant who ever signed off on his books worked out of a tiny strip mall office and questioned nothing. There was no one to catch the lie, because there was no one truly looking. He was certain that as long as the paper looked real, the lie was untouchable. He was wrong. 300 miles to the north in Boston, a man with a calculator had already found the crack. His name was Harry Markopolos, a numbers obsessive at a rival firm in Boston. In 1999, his boss handed him Madoff's results and asked him to build a fund that did the same thing. Within an afternoon, Harry knew it was impossible. It wasn't that the returns were too high, it was that they never wobbled. Real markets breathe. Good days, bad days, panic, recovery. Bernie's line just rose, smooth and unbroken, straight through booms and crashes alike. The way Harry described it, it was like watching a baseball player hit safely in every single game of the season, or a man stroll across the Atlantic Ocean without getting his shoes wet. When you see something like that, there are only two explanations. Either you were looking at a miracle or a fraud. So Harry did the responsible thing. In 2000, and again in 2005, he handed the government a detailed report. The 2005 version came with a title that left no room for doubt. The world's largest hedge fund is a fraud. And then he waited. And nothing happened. For 9 years, Harry lived like a hunted man. He had convinced himself that a fraud this enormous must have powerful, invisible partners, people who would kill to keep it buried. He checked underneath his car for bombs before driving to work. He slept with a loaded gun within reach. He had done the math, written it all down, and handed it to the one institution on Earth built to stop exactly this. He had handed it to the regulators. And the regulators had a problem of their own. The Securities and Exchange Commission existed for one purpose: to catch men exactly like Bernie Madoff. And over the years, they looked at him again and again. Tips arrived, questions were raised, investigators opened files with his name on them, and every single time they walked away convinced that he was clean. Part of it was simple incompetence. The young examiners they sent in barely understood the financial products they were inspecting. But part of it was something more human and far more dangerous. When you were sitting across the table from a former chairman of the NASDAQ, a legend who helped wire the modern market, a man whose niece had even married one of your own former lawyers, you don't see a suspect. You see royalty. And you do not put royalty in handcuffs on the word of some anonymous accountant up in Boston. So Harry Markopolos was dismissed as a jealous crank, and Bernie Madoff was treated as a national treasure. The regulators didn't just miss the fraud. They inspected it, stamped it, and unknowingly blessed it. Every time they cleared him, his investors only felt safer. The watchdog had sniffed around and found nothing. What more proof could anyone ask for? In the end, there was only one force on Earth that could bring the whole thing crashing down. Not a whistleblower, not an auditor, not even the FBI. Just ordinary human fear. Thousands of people, all reaching for their money on the very same day. And in the autumn of 2008, that fear finally arrived. By the autumn of 2008, the global economy was on fire. The American housing market had collapsed, banks were failing, and frightened investors everywhere wanted one thing: their cash back, now. For a Ponzi scheme, that is the end of the world, because there had never been any real investing. Every payout to an old investor came straight out of the deposits of a new one. The entire machine only worked as long as more money was flowing in than flowing out. Now it was all flowing out. In a matter of weeks, panicked clients asked Bernie to return around $7 billion, money he simply did not have and never had. For the first time in decades, the man who always had an answer had nothing. The printers on the 17th floor fell silent. He begged for emergency loans. He worked the phones. He searched for one last lie, big enough to cover the hole. There wasn't one. On December 10th, 2008, Bernie Madoff went home to his Manhattan penthouse, knowing he had, at most, a few hours left as a free man. He didn't call his lawyers. He didn't run. Instead, he gathered his own family for a conversation that would detonate everything he had ever built and turn his own sons against him before the night was through. That night, the penthouse felt less like a home and more like a courtroom. Bernie looked at his two sons, Mark and Andrew, men in their 40s who had spent their entire adult lives working at their father's firm, certain they were carrying on something honorable. He told them the truth in a handful of flat sentences. The asset management business was a fraud. It had always been a fraud. There was nothing behind it, no investments, no hidden fortune, just a hole worth tens of billions of dollars. It's all one big lie. He may have expected them to protect him, to close ranks and save the family name. They did the exact opposite, because in that moment, they finally understood what their father had really done. He hadn't only robbed thousands of strangers, he had spent years quietly turning his own children into the unwitting face of his crime. They walked out of the apartment. They went to a lawyer and then to the federal authorities, and they turned their own father in. The next morning, December 11th, 2008, FBI agents arrived at the penthouse. Bernie met them in his bathrobe. By the time he walked out in handcuffs, the man once worshipped as a genius of finance was nothing but a prisoner. But the handcuffs were the easy part. The price Bernie Madoff truly owed, the kind no fortune on earth could ever cover, was only just beginning to come due. The number the world remembers is 65 billion, but you cannot measure the real damage in dollars. You measure it in the charities and foundations that switched off their lights overnight, in the Holocaust survivors who had trusted him with everything they had left and lost it, in ordinary elderly couples who went to bed millionaires and woke up standing in line for help. Decades of careful saving, gone in a single morning's headline. And then there was the price paid inside his own home. His sons had turned him in, but the world never quite believed they were innocent. They were investigated, sued, and shadowed by suspicion wherever they went. Mark, the elder son, could not survive it. On December 11th, 2010, exactly 2 years to the day after his father's arrest, Mark Madoff took his own life in his Manhattan apartment. He was 46 years old. His 2-year-old son was asleep in the next room. 4 years after that, his brother Andrew died too. Cancer at the age of 48. Andrew went to his grave believing the disease had come roaring back out of the sheer, grinding stress of carrying the Madoff name. Bernie Madoff outlived both of his sons. The fortune was a ghost. The profits were a ghost. And in the end, the thing his lie hunted down and destroyed was not some stranger in Palm Beach. It was his own family. Bernie Madoff died on April 14th, 2021, alone in a prison hospital in North Carolina. He was 82 years old. His body was cremated. And then something strange happened. Nothing. No family came forward. No grave was dug. Years later, the ashes of the most infamous swindler in modern history were still sitting, unclaimed, in a box in a lawyer's office. The man who had once been begged for a seat at his table, in the end, had no one left willing to carry him home. We like to tell ourselves that we're smarter now, more regulation, better technology. But Madoff never needed technology to fool us. He used something far older and far harder to fix. Our own hunger to believe in a sure thing. He proved that if a man is respected enough, he can hide a mountain of sin in plain sight, and we will line up to thank him for the privilege. So here's the question to sit with. In a world still full of too good to be true returns and overnight millionaires, are we really any different from the people who begged for a seat with Bernie? Or are we simply waiting for a more modern devil to offer us a chair on the 17th floor? The debate continues in the comments. Subscribe and stay in the shadows of history with us. This is Golden Ruin, where every fortune has a ghost.